Hey, what is going on YouTube? Aaron here. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. We've got a fun one for you guys today. The BA Montana, the quote-unquote pay-to-win Montana. I'm going to go ahead and throw up the differences from this Montana and the regular Montana, but I want to briefly speak on the pay-to-win topic real quick. Now, I am going to be making a video on the just egregious and vast monetization that we have seen this past update. This might be, if you consider the crafting station and how much the shill could cost if you were to buy those things outright, this might be one of the most expensive updates in Legends history. All of the BA content, the Champions crates, the Borodino, the Georgia, the Siegfried, there's just a lot of content in this update. And I don't have a problem with content. I don't have a problem with Wargaming making money. I just wish it was done in a way without adding $100 reskinned legendary tier ships that basically anyone can buy. But alas, this is done in pretty much every video game. We've talked about it before. Microtransactions are the new age of gambling and casinos. So anyway, let's get to the fun of this game, the BA Montana. What is essentially a faster Montana with slightly better AP performance at the cost of a little bit of decreased range and accuracy. Although the accuracy didn't really feel that awful to me, it does have 1.8 compared to 1.9 Sigma from the regular Montana. That being said, if you know how to position yourself, read game flow, and pay attention to the minimap, you will find yourself doing well in this ship, the Montana, and pretty much every legendary tier battleship, with the exception of potentially the Vermont if you can't catch up to the action or it doesn't all come to you with how slow the Vermont is. And speaking of Vermonts, we actually had one on our team. He decided to take the left position there over on that side of Delta, and that is actually why we are kind of sitting here in this position. I wanted to develop a crossfire on the middle of the map. Now, we are detected here. However, there were only 3 battleships in this game, one of which was spotted over there on the south side of A, so we are relatively safe from a potential broadside here, and even then I am backing up to get myself into position. And that is when we spot a Minotaur slowly approaching that corner. We take the shot, it's relatively accurate, and we are running an Arthas build on Azure Lane, New Jersey in this particular game. We follow the shot, we pop the plane, and there is all but 2,000 or 3,000 of that Minos health with only 1 Citadel hit. On top of that, we have now angled ourselves into position, protecting ourselves from any battleships over there at Delta, and that is when we see the second battleship of the game, which is in the middle there over at Charlie, and he is so far away that he would never be able to hit us in this position. A lot of people, mainly uneducated people, think that this is a broadside position, and yes, it is, only if you don't know where the battleships are. Now, that initial positioning before we truthfully did was a little bit risky. However, when you back into this position here, you are able to safely escape, especially with an engine boost, out of potential danger. And speaking of potential danger, there were some torpedoes that just went by our friendly Stalingrad. However, because of this position we are in right here and the basic lack of positioning from the enemy, we're going to go ahead and turn in here and try to help our team in this situation. Our Stalingrad, of course, we know has a long-range radar. The Z-44 is playing a little bit passive. I don't blame him, however, because he actually does make a good play later in this game. Positioning your battleship to put it in the right spot at all times is a very difficult task. You want to be within decent range to get some accurate salvos, especially on broadsides. However, you don't want to put your ship in a position to where it is targeted by everyone, as well as a threat to destroyers. And that is actually where I think the BA Montana is slightly better than the regular Montana. With that engine boost capability and slightly improved rudder, you are able to get yourself out of position as we take a rather poor shot on the Shima. I thought he was turning left. However, he ended up straightening out, causing all of our shells to miss. However, any shells connected to a destroyer is a positive thing, and we really didn't have a better target to shoot at. We could have potentially aimed at the superstructure of either the Alaska or the Kurfürst. However, 1 or 2 overpins on a destroyer, especially when it is spotted, is far more valuable to your team. Even though we missed that shot, I know a lot of people, I think it was a recent comment, and I'm not trying to poke fun at this person, but he's like, I don't really shoot at destroyers because I end up missing. Well, that's kind of the point, right? You shoot at destroyers in the hopes that you do hit. You judge where they're going, you aim and place your shot accordingly, and those few overpins, like we've mentioned, are far more valuable than the 3 or 4 overpins I got on that Alaska. However, when life gives you a broadside GK, you make lemonade out of it. Unfortunately, that GK actually did manage to hit the brakes, allowing us to only get 1 or 2 overpens or a penetration on the gun there and a few shatters. Unfortunate at its finest, because that would have been a glorious salvo. The GK, while it was recently buffed, is still just one of those ships that just eats damage like sorority girls trying to experiment and find themselves in college. But speaking of experimenting, we're going to experiment with Arthas on a broadside or relatively broadside Alaska here at about 14 kilometers. And yeah, good night. Thanks for playing. Again, only 1 Citadel on that hit, but with the Arthas plane active and the increase in damage, we got enough penetrations and overpens combined with that Citadel to get over 50% of his health for the Dev Strike there. And that is actually when we noticed some incoming torpedoes, and of course this said 52 there. But there was another battleship, and we look at the scoreboard, and it was actually a Louisiana. He has yet to be detected hiding behind that island there, simply launching his torpedoes. And this is why sometimes it is best to allow players to grind to Legendary tier instead of allowing them to buy their way to Legendary tier. Now, there was a good situation of us potentially being a little bit broadside, but only to the front guns of that GK, and with us actually turning in, we prevented a straight flat surface or allowing his shot to kind of go high. If you are caught in the apex of a turn, just keep turning in. Depending on what is shooting at you, if it's a higher velocity ship or at what range, those shells, if you keep turning, will potentially go high and simply hit your superstructure for mild penetrations or hopefully overpens. So again, you don't want to be broadside, but in that situation, it called for me to turn out to shoot at the Z, and with some beautifully placed shots and some support from our team, like I mentioned, that Z44 put himself in a good position to counter that Z52. We eliminated that destroyer, and our team eliminated that GK, and now it is looking like an early victory. I would have liked to get the kill on the GK, however, he positioned himself behind that island because we actually have 2 kills now, a beautiful Dev Strike, and I said it on stream, this is turning into a glorious game. Every Montana lover's dream, right? Broadside ships without having to risk most of your health sitting in the back of the map being useless. No, I'm just kidding. I make fun of battleship players a lot because they typically complain the most and end up doing the least, whereas destroyer players will sometimes spot or cap. However, a useless destroyer player is equally as frustrating as a useless battleship player because they're both just sitting in the back or doing things which don't really help the team whatsoever. But in order not to be one of the players I was just talking about, we popped our second engine boost consumable, and we are working our way to kind of this Charlie Delta gap here, and that is when the Louisiana comes around the island 8 minutes later. This is 8 minutes into the game. He is able to fire his first salvo with his guns. And guys, I have nothing wrong with trying to, try different tactics and techniques, but if I was on the Reds, I would be furious with that play style. He has 80, I don't remember the exact health of the Louisiana, but 80 to 90,000 health with decent armor and he's basically 80% of a Montana, and to hide behind an island to simply get your planes off is just something that, again, I think people should be forced to grind their way to Legendary tier like the rest of us and experience the pain and frustration, but also learning, right? We learn through failure, and that is all I'll say about this particular engagement. Just wait, though. It gets a lot better. There you saw us get a little bit unlucky on that Yamato. We did have potentially just enough of the cheek to get a Citadel there. Now, of course, RNG, shot placement, whether or not that Yamato stops is all factors which are going to influence our potential damage output on him. But that is actually a point I want to make, and that is where the Montana suffers. A lot of players will just sit bow in, and being in this position here is a little bit tricky as we actually get a beautiful amount of damage off of the front kind of face plate of the flight deck of that Louisiana. But the bow-in fight, the Montana is no better than an Iowa going up against all of these Legendary tier battleships. With the exception, of course, of the Louisiana here, you're going to be at a huge disadvantage if you decide to simply bow in. But speaking of bowing in, this Louisiana makes the most questionable turn of all time. He wanted to get his quad turret off on the back. Yeah, I have no idea what this guy was doing. He did actually get a decent hit on us. However, we got our guns off and we turned back in. And of course, until he finished his salvo and we actually dev struck him. But Just questionable moves by a lot of these players at Legendary tier, which is why I mentioned I don't think you should really be able to buy your way to Legendary tier. Now, of course, we were all new at this game, and I absolutely wailed the Alaska, but that was, of course, after obtaining the Baltimore, knowing how to play heavy cruisers, etc. When you give newer players these ships, and I get it, I know that there are new players out there who want to get to the highest tier. I'm one of those people. I don't necessarily like the grind, but it's just like anything in life. If it gets handed to you, you don't really know what to do with it, and you certainly don't know how to play it. Learning through failure and learning the grind is just one of those things in life where you just, you kind of have to, it's not the destination necessarily, it's more of the journey here. But we are actually on 3 kills and there's 2 ships left. Are we able to secure the Kraken? We take a nice leading shot on that small end. However, he is within gun range of that Z44. And a huge shout out to that Z44. He played the game, or our cap in the beginning, a little bit passive. But as you can see, clearly, he played it the correct way, spotting that Z52, allowing us to... He kind of drew that Z52 in, and that is a tactic that a lot of Destroyer players miss. If you know that you're going up against a potential sonar hydro destroyer or a stronger destroyer in terms of a gunboat as the game finishes off in spectacular stomping fashion, make sure or draw the other destroyer to your teammate. Force them into the situation you want and don't put yourself in a bad situation. But anyway, that is a beautiful first place finish. High caliber, 2 dev strikes, the first blood, and just a good little outing in the BA Montana there. Also, just a little side note, I know I'm going to get a comment. I have the camos turned off. I think they're insanely loud and obnoxious, and I don't like looking at them while I'm playing the game. But anyway, here we go over the stats of the BA Montana compared to the regular Montana, and I'll actually put up another graphic. Thank you to 404 Justin on the Legends Discord, which was actually given to him by Cascore, who is just a longtime friend and viewer of the channel. So appreciate that little graphic there comparing and contrasting the differences between the two. But anyway, that is your pay-to-win, quote, Montana. And as I've said so many times in the past, there's truthfully nothing that is 100% pay-to-win. It's simply sometimes pay to either get to a certain tier or pay to be that much better. It's still 99% dependent on the captain at the helm. I see plenty of these BA Montanas sailing with no clue in terrible positions. But anyway, that is the video. Quick little one there. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm off to be a wanker somewhere else. I'm just kidding. Please don't. I can't be bothered with that shit. Anyway, I love you guys. Have a great day. I'm out. Peace.